Good evening, everybody, and a warm welcome. It's a very chilly night here in South Africa, in Port Elizabeth, where we are based. And so I hope you're all keeping well and warm. A warm welcome to Elizabeth Devlin this evening. This is part 6 of our 6-week introductory Enneagram series. I hope it's been keeping you entertained and intrigued and wondering about how these things work in your own life. So without further ado, I'm going to welcome Elizabeth to start talking about instincts. We're talking about instincts this evening. So Elizabeth, welcome. Could you help us understand a little bit about what you mean by the instincts?
Thank you, Tanya. And hello to everybody. And thank you for having me in your homes. Instincts and all they involve have always held a very deep fascination for me. They really have. Yet it has to be said that instincts per se have nothing to do with the Enneagram. So and we need to be clear about that. They're not part of the Enneagram per se. So let me just lay a little bit of groundwork for you or for us. First, we need to establish our 3 centers of intelligence. I think we've done that. We all have a head center, a thinking, thoughts known as a mental center. We all have a heart with feelings known as the emotional center. And we all have a gut, excuse me, and senses known as our instinctual center. So everybody has these 3 centers. Then next, there are 3 interesting movements within each one of these centers. So within the mental center, there's an outward movement of energy, and there's an inward movement of energy, and there's an oscillation between inward movement and outward movement, There's an oscillation backwards and forth, which sometimes produces a freeze in the mental center. In the emotional center, the heart center, there's also an outward movement of the heart. There's an inward movement of the heart. And there's also an oscillation between outward movement and inward movement, which tends to make a freeze in the heart. Then in the instinctual center, there's also 3 complex vortices and variations of energy. And whether you are a fish or a fowl, whether you are a human or an animal, whether you are a flower or a bee, every single living entity has these 3 vortices. They are, number 1, the survival and preservation instinct. That is paramount. Survival and preservation, and it pertains to feelings of safety, security, and of freedom. We also have the relational, sometimes known as the sexual or one-on-one instinct, which pertains to feelings of connection, intimacy, and creative processes. And we all have a community or social instinct, which pertains to our feelings of belonging, duty, and participation. Now, these 3 vortices, survival, relational, and social or community, all belong to our magnificent body, to our instinctual gut center.
Let me bring that up for you, Liz. I think this is the one, hey?
Yes, thank you. And I need to thank Carista for creating this for us. So thank you, Carista.
Now, so Liz, I just want to ask you there. So like you've said, these 3 instincts belong to the gut center or to which is located in our body. So how do these three instincts manifest in our lives, how would you describe that?
I think what I would say there, Tanya, is if we take a step backwards, we spoke about the mental center, the heart center. We can have a head full of visions, insights, ideas, fantastic, complex paradigms, shifts. We can have a head full of all this. But unless we have a body through which to manifest these ideas and these visions, they're not much use. Thank you for this. We can also have a heart, and there's no point in having a heart that's overflowing with mercy, with compassion, with empathy, with pure love. There's no point in having this heart full of all this beautiful energy unless we have a body through which we may pour those healing oils to earth. And there's equally no point in having this wonderful, magnificent body unless we can utilize the strength, the balance, the responsibility, the integrity, and the justice which belong to the body. And what would be the point of having faith and hope and charity unless we were able to use the body to manifest these beautiful qualities? So we need the head center and the heart center that flow through the instinctual center into the world, into what I call the marketplace. So all these qualities that we have need and flow through one of these instincts more than the other two, which I'll get to just now.
Okay. Thanks, Liz. I was just actually liking how you explained that. So the way that it works, so our head center, our heart center will flow through our gut center and actually manifest in the world whatever our particular qualities are.
Yes.
Okay. Wow.
So
lovely.
So let's look at these as cosmic forces. I like to look at them as cosmic forces. So let's just create another little foundation here. Our instinctual center, our gut center, lies in the deep abdominal area of our anatomical structure. It flows from hip bone to pubic bone to hip bone. This is a saucer-like shape that is the anatomical place within which energy is stored, generated, and regenerated continually. So this is where the energy comes from. And our instinctual body is made up of these three drives: the drive to survive, the drive for relationship, and the drive for community. They're extremely powerful drives. And they are a biological imperative. We need them. We can't do without them. So it must be said that we all have all three instincts. It's important to remember that. However, one of these instincts, either survival, relational, or community, one of these instincts tends to be paradoxically more vulnerable, yet more powerful than the other two. So we seem to be highly sensitive and highly intuitive in one of these centers more than the other two. And this is largely unconscious, all that's going on here. It flows under the radar of consciousness, for want of a term, because we're just not aware of all this until we begin that process of self-observation, not other observation. because we have all three instincts, everything, a fish or a fowl or a bee or a flower, because we all have them, there's rhythms moving between these three instincts. So let's just say that we could be focusing on, do we have enough money to pay the rent? Do we have enough food? And is our shelter warm and cozy? So that would be the survival instinct. And we can then, within 5 minutes or 2 minutes, be questioning, how are our relationships going? Are we making that connection with our partner, with our intimate other? How is that going? And equally, within 2 or 3 minutes, we could be thinking and having concern with our belonging within our community or our social strata or the club that we've just joined. So these three instincts are working all the time, and we are flowing between them all the time, mostly unconsciously. So again, we tend to, because we are sensitive and intuitive in one of these instincts more than the other two, we tend to have pressing concerns around one instinct, which will then dominate or overrule the other two. And this vulnerable and powerful, equally powerful instinct becomes our primary instinct. And we spend a lot of time in this particular instinct protecting it because we feel vulnerable there. So we protect it and we surround it with all sorts of buffers so we're not overly vulnerable. So there's a lot going on in one of these instincts more than the other two. So that's, it becomes
Thanks.
a preoccupation.
Liz, I'm just thinking now as you're talking. So one of them is our primary instinct, like you say. The other two, so it's not to say that we won't have, we have all three. We have all three,
Yes.
and we could go through them many times in the day. But one of them has kind of more focus, more awareness. We are more vulnerable. So as you say, we protect it more defenses
Yes.
actually surround it.
Yes.
And I like how you've explained how we're both powerful in one, but also more vulnerable. So it has a plus, but it also has, I don't want to say a weakness, but it's got a, yeah, there's a difficulty there. There's challenges that we have to face. Can you explain some more about how this operates in our lives?
Yes, so there's 1,000 things to say. There really are, but and you know how I love to talk.
Yeah,
but
yes.
So I think what I'd like to say is to make it really pretty clear. So the question would be, what is an instinct? Okay. And it's often a difficult thing to explain, but I say an instinct is a dynamic, vigorous force. Dynamic, vigorous force. It is a mighty, incredible power that flows throughout the cosmos. It is not personal, and it is not a behavior. So even if you go away this evening just remembering that, an instinct is a mighty, incredible force that flows throughout the cosmos. It's not personal, and it's not a behavior. It certainly leads to a behavior, that's for sure, but the instinct itself is not a behavior. The instincts are the avenue through which all our, let's say, visions, mental visions, and all the love in our heart flow through. So an instinct is many things, but if we can remember two, it is an avenue through which our Enneagram point flows, number one. And number two, it is an incredible cosmic force. And I want to speak for a moment about. Let me go back to everything has an opposite. You spoke about that.
Yes.
And
okay.
It's important to understand that these three instincts have an opposite. Just as a coin has heads and tails, and just as you need a positive and a negative force to make a battery work, and we need both sides of life. We only know right because of left, and we only know up because of down. We need gravity and levity to walk on the earth, and we only know fullness when we're really empty. So we only know, well, I can't say that. We need both forces. We need both sides of the coin. So we have an opposite to the instinct, which is our survival instinct could be switched off. It could be of paramount importance to us, and it could be our primary instinct, but we can switch it off. And our relationship instinct could be switched totally off, and we might not want to engage in any relationships and be anti-relationship or anti-intimacy altogether. And our community or social instinct could be switched off, and we could become asocial to the point of avoiding social events altogether, not wanting to be involved in anything where people gather together. So there's two sides to the instinct.
Yeah. It actually sounds quite complex, and actually not under our control, really, because as you said, they are great, powerful forces, and it's impersonal. It affects, the whole world, whether we, as you said, a fowl or a fish or a mosquito or a human being. So whether we like it or not, one of these instincts becomes our primary instinct, and as you said, there's a lot that goes on with it, and it can be off or on. So I think that sounds very, very interesting. There are some questions coming through, so I just wanted to say we'll deal with them at the end, because I know you've got quite a little bit more, and you don't want to go down. You want to kind of give us a foundation, like you like to say. So thank you. I see Anastasia's asked some questions, but Anastasia, we will deal with them shortly. Let's see I wanted to ask Liz. So, okay, you say it's unconscious, these life energies. How do they communicate with us? How would we become aware of their messages for us? How would we become aware of how to take them into account in our lives? I don't know if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yes, and it's something, again, that we know unconsciously. We're just not aware of it. We're usually unaware of the gut brain. When we look inside the human skeleton, we see the brain in the head very quickly, and that is termed in the neocortex the first brain, and the gut is termed the second brain. So if you want to bring an image up there, the gut has been termed the second brain. Thank you. And this, again, thank you to Carista for doing this for me. But the language of our head brain is usually logical or rational thought. The language of our second brain is very, very different. And our gut speaks to us via our enteric nervous system, termed the ENT, or our gastrointestinal tract, which is embedded in the walls of the gut. Our enteric nervous system senses the environment, locates any danger, and informs us in its own language. But before I speak about this language, I want to touch on mystic and author and priest, the late John O'Donoghue. who says that he says, we are not hermetically sealed. I love that. We are not hermetically sealed. We are open to the cosmos, to the universe, to the cosmos, and beyond. So the universe and the cosmos flow through us. We breathe it in, we breathe it out. We continually move and have our being within it. And we're not sealed, hermetically sealed from it. So the cosmos flows through us inwards and outwards. So how do we know its language? That was the question. What is the language of the gut or of the cosmos as it flows through us? Well, I'm sure you've all experienced subtle sensations in your stomach that accompany excitement, nervousness, anxiety, or fear. That is your gut telling you something. We've all felt nauseous, wanting to vomit or run to the bathroom. These are all physical sensations from, and this is important, from our gut brain to our head brain, not vice versa. The gut breathes in the cosmos and it flows upwards from the gut to the head brain. We've all felt butterflies in anticipation of an exciting event or an impending scary experience. Or we've had the sensation of being kicked in the belly when we've been betrayed or been exposed in some way. So all these sensations are the gastrointestinal tract in our instinctual center informing us. Now, I know this for myself, but I'll ask the question, have you ever felt a heaviness or a tightness or an emptiness in your stomach due to known or unknown factors? Have you ever experienced that, Tanya?
I've definitely had that.
Yes.
I think we could all identify with that, because it's our stress system that informs us.
Yes.
And like you say, it's very powerful.
And we've often felt that tingling of our skin, or the hairs on our neck or on our arm have risen. And we've felt a creeping or a crawling sensation over us or under us. We've all felt that. And in certain situations, our heart might beat exceedingly fast or slow right down. Or we might have gone stone cold or excessively hot. The body, the gut, via the body is informing us. This is the language of the gut, the language of the instinctual center. And for thousands of years, people from all races, creeds, philosophies in life have believed in the ability of our gut to notify us of dangers, of any sort of danger. Our gut, or our whole body, in fact, informs and influences our responses to people, to relationships, to communities. Our gut will inform us if we're about to engage in a potentially dangerous relationship. Our gut will inform us if there's a threatening community about to present itself. Our gut will inform us primarily of our survival in any and every situation. But the question is, do we listen? Do we listen to our gut?
I wanted to just say something there, Liz. I was just
Yes.
thinking, it's an interesting question. You say, do we listen? But I'm just wondering if it's not conditioned out of us from the time we are, 3 or 4 years old, because we're told, don't do this, sit still, don't go there, stop talking, behave yourself. So society kind of conditions us to control our more instinctual behavior. It's seen as not rational, or, we've got to control ourselves. So, but it's there. It's a powerful
Absolutely.
force. And even with my clients, we encourage our clients to pay attention. What's going on in your body? Become aware of what responses are operating in your body. Try and kind of figure out what thoughts might you be thinking, what feelings you're feeling. But your gut or your responses in your body are a powerful indicator to how you might be feeling about a certain situation. But we tend to ignore it until it basically collapse. Either the stress gets too much, or all the wheels come off, and then suddenly we start paying attention. So it's a valid question you're saying. Do we listen?
Do we listen? I think, as you say, it's kind of conditioned out of us. So it never stops, but we're unaware of it.
True.
Because we're not hermetically sealed from the cosmos. It's always 100% there, always influencing us, but we're unaware of it because the head tends to overrule it.
Yes.
So that's what we must be careful of, because our gut also notifies us what direction to take in safety. Sometimes your gut will say, scream as loud as you can. Sometimes your gut will pull right in and tell you, don't say a word, don't move. Keep your mouth really shut. Don't move a muscle. At other times, your gut might say, run like the clappers. And at other times, it might say, stand stock still. Don't move. But the head wants to overrule that. We have to awaken our awareness of the gut. We don't need to awaken the gut. We need to awaken our awareness of our gut processes.
Yeah.
And we need to acknowledge the power of the gut and what it does for us in protecting us from pathogens. I mean, we can talk about it just on a biological level, but what about your gut telling you this person is dangerous in your life? Or this person is not good for your relationship? Or this is not a community that will help you survive? Or a philosophy? Your gut will inform you, and you will know. And something to remember, I was chatting to my husband about the head. You can plan for the future within your head. You can plan all sorts of things with your head, but your gut responds in the moment. It is in the moment, powerful cosmic force. And it can change the next moment if everything's safe and secure. So it's really important, to really listen.
Valuable information.
Yeah.
I was just thinking also, if we can harness the power of our gut or our instinctual center, it's something that we can learn to integrate, because we do need our heads, we do need our brains, we do need to be able to plan and analyze and all those amazing things we can do with our computers that we have in our brains. And our hearts, we need to be able to experience the feelings and how we feel about situations, people, things, etc. But we do need the gut, because, as you say, it informs us of what's happening now. So it's what can assist us to be able to make better choices, to be able to know when there's danger, as you've mentioned, and all those very valuable points. So thanks, Liz,
Yes.
for talking about this. Um, did you also mention the communication between the enteric nervous system and the brain? How does that work?
Well, we are told, and this is, we've got to keep updating our information, obviously. We know that the enteric nervous system is not only capable of autonomy, but it also influences our head brain. So the gut brain influences the head brain. And in fact, 90%, that's an awful lot, 90% of the signals passing the vagus nerve flow not from the head brain to the gut, but from the gut brain to the head. Now, that's quite something, isn't it? That shows you the power of the gut and what we've lost touch with in our so-called civilized society. So,
wow,
yes.
that is incredible.
It
Really,
is,
really
isn't
amazing.
it?
What I wanted to ask now, Liz, is does I don't know if it's too soon to ask you this, but okay, so I hear this energy is flowing. We can't turn it off. We can do what we like. It's impersonal and it informs our instincts and all of that. And we can either be switched on or switched off. What then happens? Does this energy get blocked if we aren't paying attention to it, or if it's switched off? Where does that energy go?
That's actually a very interesting question, Tanya, and it's something I wanted to touch on because Anastasia asked me this question this week. So I just wanted to answer Anastasia, but also bring that question into an answer. Okay, so now you know, let's say you know your Enneagram point and you know your primary instinct, and through, pardon me, self-observation, you're becoming more aware of yourself. Sorry. I think, to answer Anastasia as well, it's for us to relax, soften, and surrender. There are three primary things now that we need to do. We begin with, so this is like a little process, and it is, I know, much more complicated than this, but again, just to get everything moving and shifting and the thought processes, we begin with free life force, verve. Verve is Latin for energy. So we begin with free energy, free life force, free chi, and or spirit. Verve can also mean spirit. Everything begins free. As it rises in our system, in our human system, verve is divided into a vice and a virtue. How interesting. But this is only in human consciousness, because we cannot divide energy, can we?
No.
So we divide it in human consciousness only. And we term this division of verve into a vice and a virtue. We then, in human consciousness only, say the virtue is good and the vice is bad. Okay? And society and religion compound this. And there's really good reasons for this, so I'm not going into all that now, much deeper reasons. Then how do we keep this one verve, this one energy, how do we keep it divided? Through what's termed as psychological defense mechanisms. So we place a boundary in the middle of this split energy, because we deny, we suppress, we isolate, we reform, we justify, and we lock down the vice, the so-called vice. We don't want to have anything to do with it. We only want what we've termed the virtue. This is all done unconsciously. We're not aware of it. It's all going on unconsciously. So in this split and not wanting to see the so-called vice, we create a huge shadow. And we split this off. We split this shadow off, and we divide ourselves into so many different pieces. What is acceptable, what is not. What is appropriate, what is not. What is done in our culture, what is not. So we split ourselves off into tinier and tinier and tinier little pieces. And all the pieces that are not acceptable to us go into the shadow. Okay? This often includes our most amazing and beautiful and wonderful qualities as well. So, but what is actually happening is this division into so many tiny little pieces creates psychological and spiritual distress. It creates great distress in us, and that stress reverberates throughout our whole body, throughout our whole system. And this can cause chaos. Now, this to apropos of your question, this is blocked energy in the shadow.
Exactly.
Yeah. And this blocked
it's a lot of energy. It's a lot of powerful energy, keeping all of that controlled and hidden and suppressed. So this is where a lot of dis-ease, or as you say, distress, comes from, because how can our bodies work if we are busy saying that's not acceptable, I can't do that? But as you're saying, it's the pure energy, but we are just saying we don't like that, but we like this.
Hide it. We're like ostriches in the sand. But of course, there's nowhere for this energy to go, is there?
No, and in fact, and probably it could come back like a tidal wave if we've suppressed it or hidden it, or internal warfare within us, because you see a lot of clients, and a lot of them will be, this part of me, it'll become clear, this part of me wants me to be like this, but there's another part of me that actually has something at a totally different agenda, and then you have these different parts fighting, because it's understandable if there's no integration. So I like this explanation of what happens on an energetic level.
It just causes chaos. And if it doesn't flip back in a tidal wave, as you say, it causes a physical symptom in the body, because the body is telling you this is not okay. What's happening is not okay, or what's happening is not safe. Whether it's your survival or whether it's your relationship, your body is telling you in 1,000 different ways, this is not okay. This is not good for your survival, and survival is primary. Tanya, when I came to Port Elizabeth at the end of 1982, I met an extremely wonderful man. I don't want to mention names. I don't know whether it's okay to or not, so I thought I better not. But he was a psychiatrist and a criminologist. And he was also a Buddhist.
Interesting combination.
Yes, wonderful man. And I, at the time, prior to becoming a minister, I did a lot of research on different religions. I wanted to experience, not to know and understand with my head. I wanted to experience the practices and all that type of thing. So I saw him quite regularly, and he spoke very clearly about the Eastern mind being fluid and flexible, and the Western mind being pretty rigid, fixated, thus
this word coming
fragile.
To mind.
Yeah. So there's fluid and there's fragile because it's so fixated. And he said to me, it's what you have to do with that is, he said, it's a little bit like, this is why I love analogies, it's a little bit like a Coke bottle. He said that's been all shook up. Or you could say a champagne bottle, actually. Let's say champagne bottle that's been all shook up. He said, if you take if you just rip that cork out, he said, you could have an explosion and shatter the whole bottle. But if you take it off gently and slowly and carefully, he said, let the fizz out gently, then you'll be saved. And he said, that's what we need to do. Be gentle with ourselves, soften carefully, slowly, and gently. And another thing that something Helen Palmer said to me in 1995, don't cultivate the virtue. And I often thought about that because, remember, we have divided this energy in human consciousness only. One energy, we've divided it. So don't cultivate this virtue, because what you're doing then is putting the so-called vice underground more and more and more, which will reverberate or will flip back. So I've never forgotten this. Many things that Helen Palmer said that I've never, ever forgotten. And that was one of them. Don't cultivate the virtue. Relax the hold that the defense mechanism has on you. Because the defense mechanism, the psychological defense mechanism, is the thing that's keeping this apart. Parts of me I like, parts of me I don't like. So to relax the hold softens everything. This is now for Anastasia. Relax the hold that we have. Thus, we begin to integrate many different aspects of our soul. And from a spiritual point of view, we have been told that we have magnanimous hearts. So magna meaning large, and animus meaning heart or soul. So we came into the world with magnanimous hearts. And because we've split it off and divided it and isolated it and denied and all these aspects of ourselves, we've ended up with a puny, shrunken, tiny little heart. And the word is, I wrote it down because it's a difficult word, pusillanimous.
Have you heard of that before?
Pusillanimous. It's the opposite of magnanimous.
Pusillanimous.
Pusillanimous. It means puny, shrunken, this tiny little small heart. Now, obviously, this is just touching on all this. But the bottom line is the defense mechanism holds everything in the psyche together. So we need to soften, relax, and gently release the defense mechanism and stop focusing on the virtue. Stop it. Stop focusing on the virtue and stop ignoring the vice. Just be self-aware and slowly and carefully, in a very safe place, begin to integrate this. Okay, so I hope that was a long answer for Anastasia.
Okay, so I think we've got some time. I've got some questions here. Anastasia has asked a question here on can one work on improving the other two instincts?
You know, Anastasia, it's an interesting question. And some Enneagram teachers will say yes. I don't say yes, because your primary instinct is the instinct that your greatest qualities, your greatest gifts, your greatest virtues, your greatest energy will flow through. Don't ignore the other two instincts. Be aware of them, and be aware how your primary instinct can overrule the other two. So it's more about opening consciousness and being aware. And then I'll say something which is, of course, pertaining to my ministry. Grace does the work. Don't try and do everything yourself, because one part of you is trying to change another part of you. Then it causes more confusion and chaos.
Big mess.
Absolutely. Grace does the work, Anastasia. Your job, my job, all job is to be aware, to wake up and be conscious.
And I like the way you spoke about softening. Do it so it's
Yes.
gentle. So the same thing could apply here, but just becoming
Yes.
self-aware and being gentle with oneself, and change will inevitably result. I see there's another one that Anastasia's got quite a few questions here. But there is another one from Melita, so we'll get to Melita's one now. Anastasia, how do we know if the instinct is switched off or it's just not our dominant instinct? That's an interesting question.
Yes, and there's no just straight answer just like that. Do an Enneagram instincts workshop and get really conscious and aware and work with it. It's not something that just, you can't choose. You have to become conscious of your primary instincts. So in a workshop, it will be laid out for you, all the attributes of the survival instincts, and then you work with that. And then all the attributes of the relational instincts, and you work with that. And then all the attributes of the social or communal instincts, and you work with that. So it's a process. Becoming aware or becoming conscious is definitely a process. But just watch yourself and look how one instinct, is dominant.
And I was just wondering, you'd probably also get little clues, if you've got triggers around
Yes.
some of those areas, kind of hot buttons.
Yes.
That might be a clue, because that's where the energy could be.
Yes.
And
also protective. One is protective more in one. But I think it's important to understand what each instinct pertains to. And that, work with the teacher.
That's lovely.
Thank you, Anastasia.
Thank you. Lovely. Thanks, Anastasia. So let's go to, can we bring up Melita's question?
Yeah.
Can you experience both avoidance and participation in our primary instinct at the same time? Or is it either or? Avoidance and, so I think she's saying, I think she might be saying where you said it's either switched on or switched off. So she's saying, I think she's saying, could you have both avoidance and participation?
Yes, Melita? And the interesting part there is the avoidance. Because our primary instinct is more vulnerable, there's often a difficulty or an avoidance to go there. So it's like the personality often avoids that, but the soul will draw you into it. And then you think, no, it's a bit too scary. I'm not going to go there. But then the soul will keep drawing you back. So yes, Melita, both can be working at the same time, if we've understood your question.
Yeah.
Yes.
If you're still around, just check in with us, Melita, and check if Liz answered it to your satisfaction. Okay. I like that answer, Liz. And then I've got one more, I think, from Anastasia. How do we integrate two pieces of energy without being rejected by others? How do we integrate two pieces
Two
of
pieces of
energy
energy.
without being rejected by others? I'm not 100% certain. Anastasia, I don't know if you can maybe just add a little bit to that question.
What I would
Or do
like
you
to
understand
say,
it?
no, I don't really understand the question. However, what I would like to
She's
say
saying the
is,
good and bad.
what I would like to say is, oftentimes when you begin to integrate the vice, the so-called vice, when you begin to integrate your shadow, you're not quite as liked by your friends and even your family, you know, because you're being more honest and more true. And so you might lose a few friends, not always so easy. So I think as well, the good and the bad, there isn't really any good or bad, Anastasia. It's what my culture or religion or society or education determines. I love Shakespeare. He said, there's nothing good or bad, but thinking makes it so. So, and that was taught to me very clearly living in Africa, because what one culture will do is a no-no for another culture. And what that culture will do is a no-no. So depending on your culture and your social environment, there's many no-nos. So to integrate those two things, again, soften. Don't see them as good or bad. Soften, relax them.
Thanks, Liz.
I hope that's helpful.
I think that hopefully Anastasia can just let us know if that's answered your question. There was one from Christine earlier on, but I'm not sure what you were saying at that point. So I think she was wanting a little bit more information. Can you give us an example? I think she means of what this would look like. I think at that point you were talking about the instincts and the language of the instincts. If you are still around, Christine, if there's something that you just need some further information on or a question, won't you let us know? Okay, so we'll wait a tick to see if any more questions come through. But otherwise, I think, Liz, this has been a great session. I think you've really explored this beautifully for us, the topic of the three instincts. I know I did have a question as you were going through it, but I think you did answer it for us. But if I could just rephrase it, because when you began, you said the instincts were not per se in the Enneagram.
Yes.
Or of the Enneagram. So my question at that point was, how then do our Enneagram types relate to these instincts? And I know I don't want to open up a whole topic of, I know this is a big subject, but is there a brief answer? Is there a brief answer you could give the viewers? Because they might be thinking, so how do the instincts relate then to the Enneagram?
Okay, so if you go back to the first visual, oh, thanks, Anastasia.
Okay.
Go back to the first visual, not the mental center, the emotional center, and the instinctual center. That one, that's a lovely visual.
This one?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So the head, the visions of the head, the emotions in the heart flow through one center more than the other two. So all the visions of the head, and let's say the compassion and the love and the mercy of the heart, will flow through one of these centers more than the other two. And that will be our primary center. So your Enneagram point flows through more powerfully, more distinctively, flows through your primary instinct.
Okay. I think that's your inverter. Is that your inverter going off?
Yes. Can you hear it?
I can vaguely hear it. I was like, what is that? It
We've
sounded
lost it very well.
otherworldly. So for anybody there wondering, I think that's a nice little description, that it flows through your Enneagram
Yes.
point flows through one of these instincts more than the other two. So, for example, if you were a 0.7 on the Enneagram, you might look very different from another 0.7. I mean, obviously everybody's different in any case,
Yes.
but there's certain um, uh, tendencies that are similar. I know I haven't got the right language at this point, but so you could get a 0.7 that's a survival 7, or a relational 0.7, or
Yes.
a community 0.7. So the
Yes.
energies, how your type flows through, could make it quite different to somebody in the same point who's in a different instinct.
Could be
I know I'm
very,
not
very
very
different. No, you're
different.
quite right. Or let's look at a heart 0.4, the emotional center. Let's say compassion. So if the compassion of 0.4 flows through the survival instinct, it could be compassion for the self, for the child, for the environment, for the preservation of the cosmos. For a relational 4, it could be all that compassion goes to the other in relationship. And for a community or social instinct, all that compassion of the heart will flow through to the community. So they both work together very clearly. But again, we're just touching very lightly on this, Tanya, because
Okay.
I mean, I'll do an 8-week course, or a Friday, Saturday, Sunday,
Yeah,
or a 3-4 day course on this,
absolutely.
to ground it, to ground the instincts. So really, I've touched very lightly on it.
Okay. So I think we answered Christine's question, because that came through. She was wanting to know an example of one of the
One of
instincts.
the
So I think
instincts.
the way that you explained the type 4 now in terms of survival, relational, and
Okay.
social, just briefly, that gives you an idea of the different flavors of the different, how the energy works differently in each of the different
Thank you, Christine.
points.
I think I know what Christine means, but we've already been doing this. We've already been doing this for an hour, so
Great. Okay, so yes, we've been a lot longer tonight. So, but as you
we
say,
have,
it's a complex topic, and I
yes.
think you've done it as much justice as you can in this very brief introduction. Thank you, Liz. I've really enjoyed this evening. So for everybody out there, we will be having another session next week. I know we initially said this was going to be 6 weeks. However, Liz is away next week. She's taking a breather. She's a very busy lady. She's been teaching every single night of the week. She teaches international courses online. You're phenomenal, Liz. I don't know how you do it,
Crazy head,
but
thank you.
but you're going to be away. So what I was thinking of doing is taking little extracts from each of the 6 sessions and just doing a little bit of an overview, so that for those who want to stick around to see the week after next week, that's going to be a very interesting session. We're going to do an interactive question and answer session with Liz and some of the teachers that she has taught over the last 20 years. So there's going to be hopefully another 4 teachers that will be online together with Liz, and just sharing some of their perspectives, some of their insights, a little bit of their experience. I think it should be a very, very interesting session. So that will be the following week. I think next week is the
20th.
20th. So it'll be the 27th that you will be back, Liz, with these other teachers.
No, I think next week is, I think 20th is
Oh, sorry,
is the,
20th. So yes, next
yeah,
week is the 13th. You're quite right. Next week is the 13th,
yes,
where I'll just do a little bit of a sum up and an overview based on a few
yes,
extracts from what we discussed, Liz. And then the
yes,
20th is the interactive. You're quite right.
yes.
That's the interactive session. So, Liz, is there anything else you want to say before we sign out of the broadcast studio?
Now, I would like to say thank you, Tanya. It's been a fabulous little mini-series, and I hope we've sparked a few thoughts. And thank you to all the people. Thank you for listening, and thank you to all the students, and fabulous. And if I may say, Geeta, I worked with Geeta and Suresh and the family, and it was the most fabulous thing to work with a family group, because they're all different points on the Enneagram, and all different instinctual primary instincts. It's fabulous to work with a family and to see the integration. And that was a great privilege, Geeta and Suresh. Thank you.
Wow, I think that must be incredible. And Alana also says thank you.
Also
so thank you to everybody who supported. Thank you to everybody who signed in and asked questions and commented and, really shared the information. Thank you so very much. So hang on, we've got another 2 sessions coming. Next week, a bit of an overview. And then Liz and some teachers back the following week for a live Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Everybody. Thank you. And thank you, Tanya.
Okay.